I want to preface this by saying it's great to be back in a very informal setting for these work sessions. It's nice having the chairs lined up and people kind of looking eye to eye. But thanks everybody for showing up. Some of you didn't have a choice, but some of you did have a choice. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Thursday, February 24th work session. And with that being said, I would also like to introduce and welcome Mr. Earl Mathers. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
That's correct.
He is going to be joining us as the new interim town manager for the foreseeable future. Just to give you kind of a brief bio for Mr. Mathers, I believe I read that you've got 30-plus years of local and county government experience with management. And most recently came from, was it Gaston
County, North Carolina. Yeah.
In which he managed something like 1,600 employees, 200,000-ish citizens. So he's
supposed to be a piece of cake for him.
That's it, right? But we're very, very.
Not so sure about that.
Well, we're very glad to have you. Thank you for joining the town of Abingdon. And just so that everybody knows, he will be, I guess, starting full-time maybe the first full week of March. Is that correct?
Yeah, on the 8th.
The 8th, okay. So that's, but he'll be here some during the next week or so. And we're so glad that you were able to join us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us before we start? Or?
No, don't get me started. Consume way too much time.
All right. Well, we do have a fairly lengthy agenda. Anytime Stephanie shows up, we've got a lengthy agenda. But we're so happy to have you back. I'm teasing. And I won't say anything about Ted. So with all that being said, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens.
Here.
Ms. Billion. Here. Ms. Quach. Here. Mayor West.
Here.
Let the record reflect Mr. Anderson is absent.
And at this time, we do have a flag in the room, thank goodness. I'd like to ask Vice Mayor Quach to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Doc. And not to call anybody out today, but there is kind of a new face in the room, and that's Miss Katie Garrett. She's going to handle all the media from now on, so everybody just relax. Joe Tennis will be calling in just a few minutes, okay? Thank you for joining us today. All right, so at this time I would entertain approval of the agenda. If there's no changes to be made, Council.
I'll make that motion to approve the agenda.
All right, motion by Mr. Owens to approve the agenda as is. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Ms. Pillion. Any discussion, Council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens.
Aye.
Ms. Billion. Aye. Ms. Quach. Aye. And Mayor West.
Aye. So we'll start off with some new business. We've got discussion regarding the amendment of ordinance 62-61 paved sidewalks to be kept clean and unobstructed to allow commercial businesses an annual sidewalk usage permit. Miss Mayana
Nice.
Rice.
I get to set the big table.
That's it. Welcome.
All right, so lately, as you can see from the memo, there's been an increase in the number of requests for outdoor retail. So we've had everything from people wanting to rent bikes, people wanting to have outdoor sales. We have more restaurants wanting to put an outdoor space for dining. And so we looked at what existed in the code, and the definition right now that exists for paved sidewalks, it says 62-61, paved sidewalks to be kept clean and unobstructed. The owners and occupants of lots abutting on the street of the town shall keep the paved sidewalks in front of their premises free from dirt, filth, trash, snow, ice, wood, coal, barrels, boxes, any other obstruction likely to interfere with the convenience of the public. So, right now, it doesn't actually allow it in our code. So we had, for a previous restaurant, at least one of them, been using the encroachment permit process, which Mike will talk a little bit about how that doesn't quite work with this. And so he'll describe what the process is now and how we've used it and how we need to change.
So currently, our right-of-way encroachment permit that's applied for really doesn't fit this application because it's more of a construction, short-term, type of encroachment permit within the right-of-way. What this is kind of doing is creating like a long-term, encroachment and usage that doesn't really fit into the realm of our current right-of-way encroachment permit for what like most businesses and or construction companies utilize to encroach in our right-of-ways. So this permitting application right here really needs its own kind of format to allow, because our permit requires like work area protection and all those, state kind of things. But this right here would be out of the realm really of our current right-of-way encroachment permits.
Yeah, so right now you're not, that's putting up the barrels, putting out the signs that say don't enter when someone's wanting to work in the alley. That exists and had been sort of used as a stopgap for other businesses that had wanted to do things within the sidewalk. But it's not long-term, it's not a permit, it really is meant to come and go. Do you have a question?
Yes, the property there, like in front of, I'll use the juice, white birches.
Yeah.
Is their property to the road, or is their property, the town owns the sidewalk and we just,
Yep.
so they're encroaching upon our
They are.
property?
And so that one was
Or the
actually
citizen's property.
the citizen's property. So that one was actually handled through one of these encroachment permits. But again, that's not really the process that should be utilized. So because this kind of got instigated because of the cider house and the coffee wanting to come through White Birch, and then we got a request to rent bikes on the sidewalk. So talking with Cam, we said, can we amend this definition to basically say, okay, yes, we still want to make sure the sidewalks are kept clean, but is there a process by which people could ask and get a permit to do those types of things? Because obviously we want to encourage active sidewalks. So Cam's addition to the code is commercial businesses may use approved portions of sidewalks only upon town approval of an annual sidewalk usage permit. And so, I don't know if you want to state anything related
By
to
Cam's
that.
language, my honest said, is this okay? And I said, yes.
Equal opinion in here, right? It's not just me, it's also him, so.
But yeah, I think generally we don't want, and there are lots of things like this that we've been trying to identify and have rules for. We don't want people just doing it and us saying, oh, well, there's no real good mechanism for it, so we'll just ignore it.
Exactly.
We want there to be, they have a permit to be there. It's not our stuff. We're not allowing it otherwise. They're only operating pursuant to this particular permit and pay a fee or go through the process. And we will review that from time to time, and it has parameters to it. So if it's completely blocking the sidewalk or whatever, then we can say, hey, that's outside your permit. You're only allowed to do X, Y, and Z. So it's just another process to put in place.
It also has to be within their frontage, correct, like.
Sure, and I'll get
there
into
are
that,
limits.
yeah.
So what's the ADA requirement?
For 3 feet.
3 feet total.
3 passable feet.
Yeah. So
So
the,
who's gonna police this?
so we do, no, we do have that. So the permit that we put in the packet, which I don't know if everybody has a copy of that. But the permit would talk about business name, business address, telephone, all of those types of things. The sidewalk usage, we would have the businesses choose what they were wanting to do. So it could be dining, those sandwich board signs, retail, seating, or art. Because you could see from the examples I gave you, there's kind of a little bit of all those different things that occur out there. Then a bigger piece to this equation is, is the business going to serve alcohol on the sidewalk? Because again, now we're wanting to make sure that the permit from ABC does allow them to have an outdoor area where they can serve alcohol. And then the things that we would be looking for, proof of the insurance policy, copy of all the permits and licenses, including but not limited to the ABC permit. This says a sworn statement describing any violations. So if they have had violations in the previous 5 years, we'd want to look at that. And then here's the part that you were asking about. a site plan that shows at least 4 feet of unobstructed space on the sidewalk, placement of tables, chairs, and other furnishings, applicable barriers required for the sale of alcoholic beverages. And then Tyler and I internally have worked, we have a staff member who would be responsible for doing the measurement. He's the engineering tech. I don't know if you want to say anything about him.
Yeah, Hagen.
Hagen did it.
So Hagen will be the one going out to, when the permit, he's dealing with our right-of-way encroachment permit, so we kind of brought the permitting process into the engineering side of things. So we'll handle right-of-way encroachments for utilities and contractors, but we'll also handle these. And then he'd be responsible for when they establish the site plan, to go out, measure from the curb face to the projected usage, and establish the parameters with the individual who's permitting, and then he would be responsible for going occasionally from time to time, and or if we got a complaint, to go out and pull that permit, look at the parameters, look at their site plan, and make sure that they are adhering to what we've agreed to.
Now, just to make clear, and I think I know the answer to this. This has nothing to do with the outdoor refreshment area stuff that was discussed. This is
For the
purely
record,
just
No.
a permit for a specific locale to have, whatever they can have by law.
You are
correct?
100% correct. So yes, this would be outside of anything related to that.
Now, with the historic district, the Historic Preservation Review Board has restrictions on the amount of signs. Does this supersede that, or which?
It would, because right now, we are not, if somebody has a sandwich board sign in the historic preservation area, we are not bringing those to,
So they can't get a permit to do that on the side?
they could do this on the sidewalk, yes, without having to go to HPRB. It would supersede it. Because those are temporary, we're looking at it as temporary and sidewalk encroachments rather than true signage that's like attached to the building.
It's not, sandwich board isn't a sign. I got you.
So this could provide opportunity then for some businesses to have signage that they're
Yes.
desiring.
Yes, and the fees that we put down here would be similar to, business license type of fee. We look at it as an annual permit. That way it sort of doesn't get away from us. We keep a list, an updated list, and we'd send out letters similar to what we do with business
Maya, I have a
licenses.
question.
Yeah.
Would the permit, if it was issued, say there was a change in ownership in one of the businesses, would you require a new permit, or would it just run with the business
I would
until
say-
it was renewed?
I would say we would require a new permit, and mainly because we were trying to link it to this proof of insurance. And the
Okay.
real reason behind that is just that if there is an accident, somebody runs up the sidewalk and hits somebody, or somebody's riding the sidewalk on a bike that they're not supposed to be, then there's that relationship where it's not like, well, I'm in town right away. It's like, no, that you have a permit that's related to your insurance that's not related to that accident.
That makes sense.
So today, we're just presenting it, and looking for discussion. Yes, go forward, let's, start working on an ordinance amendment process, or no, don't go forward.
Well, I think it's a good idea. I think it would provide, some of the questions we get from businesses, this would actually give them some opportunity that they maybe haven't had in the past. Procedurally, what do we have to do to make this work, Cam? 2 public hearings and all
Well,
that?
not public hearing, but 2 readings.
2 readings, correct? All right.
I think we should move forward with it.
I do.
Yeah, good
Okay.
work.
All
Thank you
right.
all so much. Yes.
Go back to the kids section.
Well, that was the easy one. That was the easy one. Now, Jimmy, do we have any unfinished business that I'm missing? All right.
Well, then, we need some more flooring in here, but we're gonna work on that. Matt's gonna work on
That's all
that next
matter.
couple weeks.
Yeah, take care of that. So that brings us to miscellaneous business and communication from the town manager. Discussion regarding capital improvement plan, Mr. Morani and Stephanie Bates.
I will start. As everybody knows, we were going to have this meeting last month. It actually worked out better because there was a lot of internal stuff that Steve and I had to work through with Stephanie to get this, I think, where it is. So it was kind of a good thing that we're doing this now, because I think it's a much better, more polished document. that we have. It's still a draft, but we, as you know, some of you weren't here, in 2020, we attempted to adopt the capital improvement plan, and we presented it to the council right before COVID hit.
In December.
No, we presented it, the work session was in December.
Yes.
We actually had it ready to go in March at a council meeting.
Ah.
We were going to, and then, yeah, COVID happened. So, and then we basically shelved the whole plan, and then we didn't really do one last year because we were still, we had a lot of uncertainties with the budget and the town's financial situation. So, a lot of the projects that were in that plan from a couple years ago are in here. A few of them we've actually completed and done. But since then, we've also got, these new streams of revenue like the ARPA, which we've identified those priority projects, so those are included in here. So Stephanie's gonna go through, we followed the same process that we did a couple of years ago where we solicited projects from staff members. They're all here, so if there's any questions that come up about a specific project. Now, this is just a draft, and these projects would have to be incorporated into the budget, and there's some things in here that when Steve, finishes crunching the numbers, we might have to, look at some of these projects and move them to a future year or determine if there's a revenue stream to pay for these. So this is basically what we'd like to have happen, and really the one that we focus on is for this upcoming budget is the one is for this upcoming fiscal year, but it's just a draft. So there's going to be some changes after we present this, I'm sure, once Steve finishes his number crunching. But I'll turn it over to Stephanie right now, and she can give you the presentation.
It's good to see everyone again, and back here. Let me give you just a bit of a background, and this is more for the audience and new members and new staff. So my work extended about 20 years in local government with really a specialty and expertise, I don't want to say that word, in local government finance. And my kind of shifting over to the academic world with Virginia Tech, I'm a collegiate assistant professor. I also am the program director for the graduate certificate in local government management. As part of those programs, I interact, I'm the MPA advisor, our Masters of Public Administration, and advise our local government students. As part of that program, we really look for opportunities to engage our students in the work of local government so that they can build real world skills and we can prepare the next generation to be in y'all's seats, to be in y'all's seats, and to be in y'all's seats. And so I say all that because I would like to introduce Jonathan Peace. He is an MPA student. He is also a graduate certificate in local government management student. He will graduate this May, and he has been an integral part of this project for the town. So I did want to let you all know that. I am going to ask Jonathan to present a couple slides at the end, and you will see me taking pictures because everybody loves that at Tech, and y'all I have to act like a little mom.
We have job openings here in town.
There you go.
It's a great place to work and live.
So thank you for entertaining me with that part. This is as Jimmy said, this is our second year of our contract, even though there's been some delay. So we'll be back next year. This is technical assistance projects through Virginia Tech. We'll be back next year to help with the next round. And then really, it will fall to the staff, or we can come back forever if you would like us to. I think I'm here forever. And I think you'll feel the same way. Okay, so what are we going to do today? Our goals for this meeting is to provide you with an overview of the project, the technical assistance project, and the process. We're going to present the draft 5-year capital improvement plan. Just so you know, it was a little bit different this year, but in general, we'll meet in the fall with the department heads, with your town manager, and we'll distribute forms where we are capturing the capital improvement projects. A capital improvement plan is different from your operating budget. I'm going to come back It's different from your operating budget because these projects have a useful life of more than 10 years. Their cost is greater than $20,000. And typically, if it's a construction project, it will go on for more than just a year. And that's kind of opposed to your operating budget that's on a fiscal year basis and just ends at June 30. So we have really been focusing on your existing condition and identifying needs alongside your department heads, and really they lead that process, quite frankly. And it sets forth the needs and priorities for the town based on some anticipated revenues growth and your ability to pay. The one thing I do want to highlight is just because you adopt the capital improvement plan does not mean you are finished. The next people that see this or organization are your financial advisors, because there are financing revenue sources that are identified in your CIP. I believe you all use Davenport. You'll hand this to Davenport and say, can we afford this? How can we do how can we structure our debt the best way we possibly can? So that's really for the audience, that this is the front part, and then the back part is implementation and working with your financial advisors on any kind of financing you might need. In terms of the process, so fall of 2021, we sent the department forms. We compiled that draft. In January, we met with the finance director, the town manager, and really had an in-depth session on what the projects look like. We're bringing this for you to review the proposed CIP. At the end, you all will have a discussion on what's the expectations for next steps. But typically, it would go back to the staff with any changes you make today. We'll look at the funding and what we have in terms of budgets. It'll come back to you as proposed, and then it can be adopted. The first couple things I want to let you know, you do have a draft document. That's this Word document, and that provides much more detail than what I will attempt today. And then again, you have your department directors here as well. You have two funds under the town finance structure, the general fund and the wastewater fund. And so we're going to go through those general fund projects first. And no one can see this, and I apologize for that. That's why you have a hard copy. The first slide, and the first couple slides are going to be your proposed project list. So I'm just going to hit the highlights on this because we'll go through this in more detail. But there's some key things for you to know. 39% of the projects shown in the general fund are related to public works and streets. Okay, the street division. 28% of those projects are related to tourism, 16% in terms of parks and grounds, 10% information technology. Fire is about 5% of your total planned expenditures, and then community development at 1%. I think it's interesting to think, because that's exactly what towns do. They focus on the infrastructure and streets and that sort of thing. So 39% of your planned expenditures are in that area. In terms of public works, facilities, parks and grounds, we have a total of $507,000 planned for over the course of the 5-year CIP. And like I said before, I will get to the individual projects, but I want to hit the highlights right now. In terms of information technology, we have planned $1.6 million for the fire department, just one project at $850,000. Recreation, we have two projects at $209,249 planned in the 5-year CIP. For parks and grounds, $2,076,842 planned over the 5-year plan. 4.7 million for tourism, and then community development, 205,000, and then your street department is 6.4 million for a total general fund expenditure of $16.5 million over the course of the 5-year CIP. In terms of revenue sources on the general fund, let me flip my pages, I apologize. No one sent me one of those, what's those things called where you stand up at it? That's it.
Oh, the podium?
Podium.
Oh, I told him not to put it up. I didn't know you were gonna stand.
It's okay.
Sorry.
I have to jump over.
All right.
Okay. In terms of our revenue sources, so the revenue sources are identified by project. Again, I'm gonna hit the highlights. Financing of $3.3 million. This is however Davenport will structure that financing, but basically we're saying we are going to issue some kind of loan, bond, lease purchase arrangement, whatever that might be. 20% of the general fund projects, I said that wrong. The financing is 20% of all revenue sources, which is really good if you think about it. You're focusing more on cash than you are financing projects. In terms of the general fund, we're looking at cash over 5 years of $5.1 million. Grants and donations, we have planned $4.4 million over the 5-year CIP, and then state funding resources in terms of VDOT and those sorts of state agencies of $3.6 million. Again, 31% is general fund, 27% anticipated grants, 22% state funding, and 20% financing. So it's a nice mix and balance in terms of your revenue sources. We're gonna go through these. Now, here's my plan. I'm gonna tell you what I think these projects are about, and then we'll ask the department director if y'all have any questions. How about that? So the first one is the replacement roof and HVAC upgrades here for the town municipal building. That's planned at $254,500. I am gonna stop because this is a workshop session. Does anyone have any questions on that particular project? Or if you all want me just to keep on going and you tell me when to stop if you have a question. Does that work?
Just keep on going.
Okay. For the police department, we have HVAC and interior renovations, $72,500. For the train station, we have exterior repainting and window glazing. And the project cost of $40,000. At the Arts Depot, tile and exterior improvements of $45,000. And then at Field Pen, we have repointing the brick, the back sidewalk and landscape for $95,000. So total for facilities management, $507,000. Any questions on any of those projects?
The first two were actually, they were identified in the first
That's correct.
one a few years ago, and.
Yeah, I remember us talking about the roof
Yeah.
replacement.
And the HVAC is very inefficient here, and we've had all kinds of problems.
So I think the only question I have is moving through this, I just want the general public to kind of understand, is there a sense of a pecking order or a prioritization of each of these projects? I mean, obviously, the council knows, I think, a little more detail about the projects, so we can kind of gauge them, but is there a way we can kind of, I guess, tell the public that these are priority, these are things that if we have to cut, we can cut, or is that something we just do internally?
So I
or-
think in terms of priority, the projects that are showing up in the first year of the CIP, which is fiscal year 22-23, that very first column, those are gonna be the priority projects. And those are the ones you really need to make a decision about if you're gonna keep them in, how you're gonna fund them, or if you're gonna move them back in the CIP. That's really the immediate decision. So if I was guiding the public, I would say the projects that are in that first year are the priorities.
Okay, makes perfect
So when we
sense.
come up to one that we feel like we may need to push back, we need to bring it up now or after the meeting?
I'll ask
I think if there's one, I mean, I think there's, I wouldn't be being honest to say that we're probably not gonna be able to do everything in this one the first year, so I don't know if that necessarily is gonna be able to be identified today until we plug these into the budget, and then we have a finance committee meeting next week. But I think if there's some, just, I would just keep it on your mind. I would be looking at these and saying, okay, this is one, make a note and say, this is one that we could wait on. I would just kind of do that now, and so if you want to discuss that with me or Steve after the meeting, or we want to bring it up to, if you want to bring it up to Donna and Derek, and then we can discuss it, well, they can discuss it at the next finance committee meeting, because even though it's going to be operational, we're going to have to start making some decisions. Like I said, it's a wish list, but we did internally move some things even when we were going through that meeting that we had,
That's
we
right.
did even move some things out of the current year into the next year because it was just not gonna be sustainable to do a lot of these. And let's be honest, could we wait another year on the HVAC and interior renovations? Yeah, we could, but we just keep kicking the can down the road. But that's also not one that is as visible to the public. So you need to realize that if you're looking at projects that are going to be visible in the community, as much as we want to have a new HVAC system, we think it's going to be more efficient and it might have advantages, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, the ones, the streets, the parks and things like that, those are the ones that the community has the direct impact on.
Obviously, on this
Yeah.
list, the Fields Penthouse is
The
probably
Fields
the one that
Penthouse
most people
is
are
a
gonna
priority.
recognize.
We've prioritized that even this year with the recent discussion. So, you know, I think that's what you just have to be cognizant of as you're trying to prioritize some of these.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephanie.
So the direction is keep your list. And that way, that
Yeah.
can be shared after the meeting. Great. Great, good, thank you.
And everybody's gonna have a different opinion, you know, on it, and so, you know, it just, any bit of information helps us, will help staff to prioritize.
In terms of information technology, the fiber infrastructure build-out expansion of $330,000. And then phase 2 expansion of the public safety and town communications. And you can see from the numbers, that's about $1.2 million, almost $1.3 million. So total for information technology is $1.6 million over the course of the 5-year plan. Any questions on those projects?
Yeah, another thing I do want to bring up is that there are some projects, like for instance, the facility issues. I know they're critical, Matt would say they're critical, and you know, every department obviously feels like their projects are the most, but that is a critical project. When the financing comes into play, okay, we understand there's a critical, maybe we can't cash flow it, maybe we need to, you know, to look at financing or something like that. And so those are the discussions that could be had later.
Absolutely. And so the more information you can give, and when I say you, I mean council, in terms of priority, that helps inform the financing package at a later date. Yep. Oh, something happened. Did I do that? There we go. The fire department, replacement of the rescue engine and tanker with a new 3,000.
All fire department requests are urgent and necessary,
Yep.
according to Chief McCormick.
$850,000. Yes, sir.
This is one that could be financed though, so
Yes.
this is a pretty, we could spread this cost out. That's what we've
And a
identified.
potential large grant
With a
too, right?
15% increase annually on fire trucks.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
That's it.
But there's a
Surprised
big
it's not more
Washington
than that.
County grant for that too, right?
Well,
Hopefully.
that's a, gonna throw rings in a bucket and see if you get it.
Okay.
For the Coombs Recreation Center, the train indoor pool boiler replacement project, that's been on there. I
We
think.
have to do that one this year, just
Yeah.
so, we had to replace a part to buy us an extra 2 years, or was it 1 year? Because we had it in the original capital improvement plan, but then we put it, so that one has to be done.
Yeah, we kicked the
Yeah.
can on that
We
one.
kicked
I
the can, you
we
remember
kicked
that?
the can on that
And they
one,
ended up spending, I
then-
think it was like 5,000 or 6,000 for a new part, and
Right.
it got us
That's
through.
for the outdoor pool, this is for the indoor pool.
No, but I thought we had to do something else for the indoor pool. Oh, no, we knew if something happened and we needed to replace it, it was
It was
gonna
gonna
be,
be
it was gonna be 5,000 or
5,000.
6,000, but
So
we,
we
so far
haven't
we've made.
made that plan on this one,
On this
but
one
we
yet.
don't want the last summer to
Right.
repeat itself for the indoor pool.
Right,
because
right.
The indoor pool was the saving grace when that went out.
That's right. That was gonna be the expense if something happened. It was
Yes.
the 5,000 or 6,000, okay.
And the total project cost on that is $61,683. So relative to other projects in the CIP, it's not that heavy of a lift. The Coombs Recreation Center parking lot repaving project, I think that's been in there for a couple of years as well, $147,566. So total for the rec center, $209,249. Any questions on those? Jimmy?
No.
Okay, good. Okay, so then we are going to move to parks and outdoor recreation. So we have a number of, I wouldn't say a number, we have a couple replacement of lighting poles and lighting fixtures with LED, Latour Field and.
Latcher.
Thank you, Ray Petty and Foster DeVoe.
I think it's French. I think that's a French also.
I know you're gonna try it.
You had it right.
Just kidding.
Thank you. So the first project is at $408,500. The second project at $567,960. We have permanent bathrooms at the park at $61,300. Tennis court resurface at North Church Street, $31,500. Permanent restrooms, $61,300. Creeper trail trestle inspection, trestles 8 through 15. And it's my understanding, I'm sure you can speak more to this, this is kind of a recurrence of that project.
Yeah, and those were, I believe we identified ARPA funds for those,
Yeah.
for those ones, yeah.
$56,200, and then trestle repairs on the Creeper Trail, love the Creeper Trail, that's a plug, $60,300. So total for recreation projects, $829,782. Can I just speak to one thing, and I think it's important, we did not identify ARPA funds, but they will be general funds, if that makes sense. So no matter what category.
Yeah, we were
general
trying to
fund
simplify it. We
includes-
didn't want to make too many pots. And since the ARPA funds are essentially going to be transferred over to the general fund because they're considered quote lost revenue, we didn't want to overcomplicate the document.
Exactly.
So that Steve and Stephanie and I decided, so there will be, obviously, the 4 projects that you've identified. If you see them in here, understand that even though it might be designated as general fund, it really is the true source of that are ARPA funds.
Right, and we will be tracking the ARPA funds specifically as we go forward, even though they may flow over into the capital projects fund.
Because remember, there's reporting requirements. We have to do everything
Right.
very
Any
meticulous.
questions on those projects from council? Okay. Tourism, so this is your mountain bike park, the Skills Pump Track and the park itself, $4.7 million for that particular project. Any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that this is obviously a wish. There has to be a funding source identified, but one thing that Stephanie had told us from the beginning, if it's not in the plan, we can't plan for it. So understanding that if there's not a revenue source, you know, there are some pending grants right now that are out there that Tanya has been working on. So understanding that this is something that's relying on that additional revenue, so.
And that's how we
I don't
set
want
up
there to be a
these-
perception that we're gonna go out and do this right now. There has to be a funding source.
I'll say one thing about pump tracks. If you build it, they will come. I'm serious.
Yeah, they will, yeah.
Community development, these projects are actually kind of one end of the same, $205,000 for the wayfinding, the master plan, and then implementation through the town. I don't know if we have any questions on that.
I don't know, that was kind of one that Maiana was kind of heading up.
Do you want me to say anything about that?
Sure,
Um,
because they talk about that at the infrastructure committee, but some of the other council members
Sure.
might not be aware of
So
it.
it kind of started with the sports complex and us looking to put signage out there. We have funded at this point the interstate signage to bring people off the interstate. But then once we started looking at that, we thought there's actually a lot of cluttered signage throughout town, even the entrance signage and how people get from one end of town to another. And so we started looking at a variety of communities. Do you want to talk a little bit about
Yeah, if you've
the
been,
really great
yeah,
one?
I was gonna say, if you've been to Kingsport recently, you've seen they've got black signs with varying sizes, but as you come into the corridor, they kind of list the major landmarks, and as you enter into the different smaller street sections, they kind of break down into smaller wayfinding signage. And so they have a uniform look. They all look the same, so you know what you're looking for. If you see one, you know how to identify the rest of them. They've actually updated all of their entryway signs, like "Welcome to Kingsport," with the same look across the city. So if you're ever that way and you see those, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a comprehensive, cohesive signage plan to get people into town and move them to places throughout town, and get rid of these clustered signs and singular signs that really just kind of confuse, I think.
And I think with the sports complex, we're bringing all the additional people, visitors into the community. We thought the timing would be good, especially since we're choosing the signage for the sports complex and
Yeah,
everything.
this is kind of a, yeah, like a step one in a larger step, yeah.
So Kingsport Light is what we're trying to create, basically.
It's something similar, yeah, for sure.
And it's a safety issue too. I mean, if people are looking at different signs and trying to figure out where they're going, that's really confusing.
I think Tyler presented that to the Historic Preservation Review Board at one time. And you had a photograph of the signs, I think from Kingsport. They're very attractive, they're very organized very well.
Yep.
I mean, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, and the comprehensive plan would develop or we would aim to develop what we would call like a sign family or an overall design that specs color, scheme, size, lettering, all of that, so that in the future, if we identify an area that needs signage, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have a design that we just say, this is what we want it to say, and we're gonna put it here, and, you know. It's very cool.
Public Works and Streets, so, again, this is, one of the priorities for the town, and you see that in the funding that's been allocated. I'll get through these, and then we can talk about, if you all have any questions. So Clark Street sidewalk, $460,000. The West Main Street sidewalk, $1.2 million. Green Spring Road realignment, $610,000. The connector road at $1.5 million. East Main Street sidewalk, right at about a little over $1 million. The automated sidearm trash truck at $82,000. Replacement of one of those, $315,000. Replacement of the Bobcat, $55,000. The tractor replacement, $155,000. The dump truck replacement, $125,000. Can never say that first word right. So the hut replacement, $600,000, and then the sweeper truck bed replacement of $25,000. So the total for all of your public works and streets is $6.4 million. Questions on those projects?
Not particularly. So it looks like the sweeper truck, Mike, is what we need first. Is that what I gather?
I think the sweeper truck and the automated trash truck, we're operating, with their trash trucks now, but we're gonna have to replace it sooner rather than later.
Right, sure.
We've kind of kicked the can down the road on the trash trucks for a while. In fact, some of the trucks we can't even get parts for. We happened to find, Jamie was able to find
Yeah.
an older one that we basically bought it for parts.
To keep them running, but
Yeah.
it's coming up to a point where, we're just gonna have to bite the bullet and,
Yeah.
make that happen.
Now, which one of these are,
Automated.
for instance, like the Green Spring Road or the Connector Road? That's obviously going to be dependent on
That's depending on,
funding.
yeah.
Okay. But which ones of these, like Clark Street and West Main Street, are those, there's
Those are
VDOT
potential HSIP through VDOT,
for this fiscal year though?
if they open it up.
If they open it up, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Do we already have actual engineering done on those projects, or is that, okay, I was just curious. I know we've talked about the West Main Street multiple times, but I hadn't seen any.
Yeah, and that would come through the VDOT programs, a lot of those would be, if they open up their HSIP or their systemic applications,
Right.
smart scale, because smart scale is getting ready to kick off, open up at the end of, like the 1st of March.
Okay,
So we'll start smart scale applications for some of those projects.
good deal. I think I'm good, unless y'all have any questions.
And I think some of these I wanted to point out, and I just realized because there was a number that Stephanie said, some of these projects will span more than one fiscal year.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I thought about something, and I said, okay, wait a second, that's only this fiscal year's portion of it. So just keep that in mind, if a project is budgeted for this fiscal year and that's in there, it's because it could be crossing over two fiscal years.
Good? Okay. I'm gonna open up the discussion on the wastewater fund, and then Jonathan will walk you through the projects. So in terms of your wastewater funds, a proposed project list, we've broken it out between collections and the wastewater treatment plant. So 39% of your projects are related to the plant itself, 61% is related to collections. $4.3 million in collection projects, and then $2.8 million for the treatment plant. So a total of $7.1 million in the wastewater fund. In terms of the revenue sources, so I did want to highlight, we have both a combination of financing and the wastewater fund. When we say wastewater fund, those are the normal charges that we get from the monthly bills, from connection fees and that sort of thing. So you can really think about that in terms of cash, just like you do the general fund revenue source. In terms of financing, we've got about $4.9 million in financing. That's about 69%, and then we're looking at using cash for the wastewater fund of about $2.2 million, and that is 31%. The key thing about the financing, and it seems like it's a little it's a different ratio than what we saw in the general fund, but remember, your rates that you charge are going to pay that debt service, so it really shouldn't impact the general fund. The wastewater fund should pay for itself, including any financing that you're going to do for infrastructure improvements. And with that, Jonathan, I will turn it over to you.
All right, I want to run through the wastewater collection projects. First is the acoustic tester CCTV crawler system, which is $145,000. The second is the collection systems electrical, which is $300,000. New safety equipment, which is $200,000. Remote trench roller compactor, $60,000. SCADA upgrade to the collection system, which is $300,000. Sewer upgrades from the study 1 out of 1, which is $3,150,000, and the Wilson pump station generator and automatic transfer system is $180,000. Is there any questions on these?
Chris is here to answer any questions about that.
I was actually going to throw him under the bus and say, can you please explain what a remote trench roller compactor is?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't want to.
Oh, there's not a chance.
Yeah, and just so you know, it's that's actually I&I, the one. I think when it went from the spreadsheet to the PowerPoint, that's okay.
Thank you.
Yes, not a lot of people who don't deal with sewer would know what that is, but. Chris, what would you say? I mean, obviously they've been in there for a little bit more than, well, almost 2 months, but then Dave and Ryan have been there for several months before that on the transition, and they have, obviously have identified some of these. I know the SCADA is critical.
Yes, very critical.
And what are some of the other ones that are the most critical?
Well, of course, the safety equipment, like right now, I mean, of course, the pump stations, the pits, they're confined space. And there's really no equipment there at the pump station to be able to get into confined space safely. I mean, we had testing equipment and stuff like that, but as far as hookups, to be able to hook up a winch or hook up lifelines and things of that nature.
So have they been getting in there? Have they been going there before without the safety equipment then in the past, or they have not been doing those types of repairs? We don't know.
Probably a little of both.
Okay. Well, we had a contract. Well, we probably had a contractor that did that, right?
What did you say, Kim? Don't make me get out loud.
Sorry. No, I'm saying we probably had a contractor.
I was coughing.
Wow. All right.
Yeah, they did have contractors because they would call us before they would go in to put us on standby.
They would?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I thought. I just.
Good.
Okay.
You good? All right, next is the Wolf Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant projects. And I'm going to go through them. The aeration basin and primary treatment plumbing is $180,000. The ammonia treatment equipment is $250,000. The DO-ORP pH meter replacement is $60,000. Engineering plans for plant upgrade is $165,000. Equipment repair and replacement reserves, $625,000. Grease holding tank, $105,000. Industrial line flow meters, $105,000 as well. Primary digester maintenance is $130,000. The purchase of second tertiary filter will be $520,000. Replacement of old centrifuge, which is $420,000. SCADA upgrades to this facility, $120,000, and secondary clarifier overhauls is $125,000 as well.
I want to bring everybody's attention that there has been a lot of deferred maintenance the sewer operations. And so thankfully, the fund, and Steve can attest to this, is in very good shape. I mean, we obviously are going to be spending down some of that, but most of these are needed upgrades, and we might have to spread them out through, we have the benefit of taking those funds and doing some debt, financing them with some.
And in the past, they've been borrowing a lot from
The
the
general-
sewer fund.
Or from the sewer funds, right.
From sewer into the general fund, and over the last year, we've made every effort to pay that back off the books so that we have a cleaner view of what the actual fund balance is on the proprietary side. Chris, the one thing that came out, is the muffin, is it part of the digester as well, or is that?
No, they're part of the pump stations.
Okay, but that's not on here. Because
No, because we're going to do that this year.
We're doing that.
Yeah, we're doing that
Okay, just
now.
to make sure.
Is there anything specifically that you want to point out here? Any of these projects that are most critical, or?
SCADA is very critical.
Can you explain to some of the council members what that is? Because some of them might not know what that is.
It's just a remote system where we can monitor the plant, do things, make adjustments. Actually, you can remote in and make it, or you should be able to, but we can't do that very easy. We can monitor, we can't make adjustments. So the SCADA is probably about 20 years old, so it's very outdated. You know how technology is, and a lot of it's not working properly. I know CJ can probably talk a little bit about that.
Yeah,
the history of that.
we've dealt with it pretty much all weekend with issues, and to the degree of some certain systems of having to go back into the closet to find older computers to be able to work on it and things of that nature. So it's definitely a needed thing. And if they don't have it, that's what we've ran into this weekend, where they didn't have certain functions of SCADA, so they've had to have people there 24 hours and things of that nature. So it's both a staffing issue and a critical operations issue, even from state compliance and everything. So it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Would it be safe to say that over time it would save us money because we wouldn't have to staff the facility 24/7?
Yeah, it would make things a lot more efficient, and like I said, just for compliance issues too, we really need.
Well, I think that the controlling of things remotely, if there's an issue, a critical issue that comes up, if they don't have the ability to address that remotely,
Yeah,
the timing of being able to fix that problem could create issues.
yeah,
If he could pull up his laptop and remote into SCADA and fix that from his house, if it's, 2 o'clock in the morning, or an operator can do that.
right, or even simple things.
Yeah, or even simple things. Yeah,
So-
it
Yeah. And
more
that's-
efficient, and it could help avoid issues.
Yeah, and that's like, on Tuesday, we have 2 power sources coming into the plant, from AEP, and, which is why we don't have a generator, because we have 2 power sources, so hopefully one power source or the other would work. So we had one power source go down, of course it set off an alarm, but when you do that, you have to go in and manually set a setting for the power source between the 2 power sources, set it to manual, and so that way if the power source comes back on, they're not bumping into each other and cause a lot of issues, which that happened. Of course, we didn't know anything about it at the time. And so even something like that, you wouldn't want you wouldn't want that situation to happen for any length of time. So I had an electrician come in and look at it, and he said probably, just as soon as you can, you want to make that change. He said half an hour would be a long time. So it could damage other equipment and things like that, which it did on some things. So we have some issues with some other equipment that are not working properly now. So we've been working on those the last couple of days. And there's just a lot of issues, a lot of things that just that you would want to do preventive maintenance wise as you go along, and not just wait to do things and then everything just all at once, everything's going wrong, which is sort of where we're at now. For instance, on some of the SCADA stuff and some of the PLCs we have, they have battery backups. The battery backups are like 10 years old, not working. We lost one of our programs on one of the centrifuges the other day because it went out, the program went out. Luckily, we found the program, but the battery backup wasn't working, so we lost the program. So it took some, was you in on helping with that? or-
Trying.
So we had some of our people up north remotely trying to help us and was able to get that back and going. But just a lot of issues like that, so.
And we promised there wouldn't be any issues after January, so we apologize.
Yeah, you need to apologize. Yeah, 'cause there's a lot of
We thought all of that stuff was gonna happen before December
Yeah, it's
31st. I
like,
think
what else could happen
that's what
next?
Ryan prayed for, Dave prayed for,
Yeah.
that all those things happen before January 1st.
We need some more heart praying. And, you know, the DO meter replacements, some of those things on some of the aeration bases and stuff have been there for forever. Some of them are not working. I know they replaced a couple of them last couple of years, but so to monitor the dissolved oxygen level in the tanks, you know, a lot of those aren't working. Some of the diffusers, I guess, probably need to be replaced. So you'll see some of that in the aeration basin, primary treatment plumbing.
I mean, I feel very confident after the discussions we've had with Dave and Ryan and Chris and Jay on their on the conference calls. You know, there's some that they say, oh no, that can wait 3 years. I feel very confident that what Woodard and Kern has identified, if they say this needs to be done this year, pretty much can take it to the bank.
Yeah.
So I know it's a little bit aggressive, but like I said, this is just, I think, over time, just been a result of just
Yeah.
older equipment,
Yeah.
you know, deferred maintenance.
And even with the SCADA upgrades, you know, for the plant and the pump stations and stuff, we're looking, you know, I don't know, it might be to a point where we need a total new SCADA system. But our people are evaluating that too, so. A lot of these just aren't easy, simple fixes, it just takes a lot of planning and time. So it's just gonna take a little bit of time to get where we want to be, and a lot of money.
I know we've had some questions, like we had a letter about the grease collection. Would the new grease holding tank rectify that situation that people have reached out to us about?
I think that will help.
I actually just recently, we got a proposal from Woodard and Kern, and I did forward it to everybody, just so you were in the know. They have already basically come up with a plan to try to get, the plant was designed to take fat oil,
Yeah.
grease, and to take septage. And
that's
those are some of the concerns that we've had.
system for that.
We have a system for that, and then there was no, I mean, it was pretty much a moratorium. I think there was still some septage being taken in or some,
But not in the special waste building.
not in the special waste building,
Yeah,
okay,
so
which was
For
designed, it
whatever
was
reason,
designed for that.
Yeah, it was designed for that, but for some reason, we
Yeah.
quit using it, there were some issues.
So they're doing an initial review right now, and they actually have looked at some new technology possibly for fat oil grease, but they understand that it's something that we want to do. They're taking steps to try to get us back to that point, and that's what that recent proposal was that they sent us, which I authorized the other day. So I don't know where that grease tank comes into play, but I'm guessing it probably is for increased capacity for a
I would
for a
assume.
holding tank or.
Yeah, I'm not real sure on that one.
This was one that David had put in there, so.
Because that Dave worked
Yeah.
on all this stuff.
I don't have a great understanding
Yeah,
of that myself. That's out of
It's a
my
complicated issue. I mean, I don't necessarily, I mean, I understand, you know, at the time, we said, we don't need to take grease, it's damaging to the plant. Yes,
It does.
it does. We acknowledge that, but there are ways to accept it and to treat it, and we do have the capabilities of doing it. It's just gonna take some time and some effort to do it, but we will get there. And I think Dave pretty much has assured us that we are going to get there, and that is the plan, because there are contractors around here and services that need to take this somewhere, and I have communicated that he was at one of the meetings when one of the gentlemen was there, and we are working towards that, and Woodard and Kern is working towards that to come up with a
They
solution.
pay a fee to dump their.
And they do,
grease.
yeah, and they, like right now, we still have some that dump septage, like we have like 3 or 4 contractors that do that right now. And it's just, we've limited the septage to a very small area, whereas, I mean, Dave also, you know, Woodard and Kern is looking at also as additional revenue. I mean, if to help to help fund the wastewater
Yes, sir.
operations. I mean, if we can take that, if the plan is designed to take that, and we can find an efficient way of treating it, then let's bring it in because it's a revenue source.
So the people who are bringing it to us are properly permitted and do what they're supposed
That's-
to, then yes.
Then yes, that's true.
So
That's
the
a
fees would
caveat.
pay for itself.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I
this,
don't
yeah, this is,
understand
oh,
this
yeah,
whole
this is not
process.
gonna, this is
I know
not
we get
gonna
a
be
letter.
a money losing
two.
operation. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But that is in the works, and if you have any questions specifically about that, feel free to talk to Chris about it. Yeah, most of that stuff's over my head.
That really is the end of our presentation. I think it's a nice way just to introduce you all and introduce the council to the CIP. As Jimmy said, you want them to give you comments that will be taken.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly talk about anything right now if they want to, if there's something in here that kind of stands out. I mean, I can tell you that we're not gonna be able to fund everything on this. We're just not, for this fiscal year, we're just not, and so I think you need to be.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense for us to get a little further into the budget numbers before we say, oh, we're gonna have to cut 50%.
Well, I think two
projects
things,
or-
one of which, that this current year budget, certainly,
Yeah.
because we have to factor in our current debt that we have with, the most recent bonds.
Sure.
But also to see how well the sports complex is gonna generate what we anticipated.
Sure.
Which could fund, hopefully,
Could fund a lot of it.
easily fund, exactly. And also, as we talked before on the ARPA money, the ARPA money, as I've shared before, the concern that I had with some of the projects that have been identified is that the clock is ticking. It's not that we don't have the money, but the clock is ticking. And so if we find ourselves in a situation where one of those originally identified projects, particularly the flood mitigation, that's a very high-cost project, but it's also a long-term project. If we find ourselves bumping up against that clock, that we've got to spend it, then we can look at some of these CIP things and say, okay, let's use we got to spend the money, we got to spend the ARPA money, let's use it on these critical CIP areas, and then look for additional revenue sources for that other project, because it's going to be beyond 2016. And keep in mind, this CIP goes to 2027, and our ARPA funds stop on 2026.
Perfect sense.
So, but despite Jimmy characterizing it as a wish list, which I fully appreciate, there's really nothing on here that's superfluous to me.
No.
Whether or not it's critical this year, next year, whatever.
Sure.
But as we talked before, the fact that we have the ARPA money and all of these other projects, they're for safety, they're for revenue generation from tourism, they're for basic infrastructure maintenance, because pay me now or pay me later kind of things. So, very comprehensive list. I think y'all did a fantastic job of putting it together. I thank the department heads for all the
Yeah.
effort that they put into
I mean,
it
it
too.
really is the credit to them,
Yeah.
And like I said, if you want to know the breakdown of which projects are going to be funded in what year, look at the plan, because, I mean, those are a lot of projects, but they're not all going to be done this upcoming year. And so, I mean, that wasn't delineated on the spreadsheet or on the presentation, but you can see where they will fall, in the calendar. Like I said, with the wastewater stuff, there were some that are critical, but, Dave had indicated, well, this can wait, 3 or 4 years down the road. So, focus on the ones that are budgeted, as you're looking at these, focus on the ones that are budgeted for fiscal year 22, 23. And if we have to make decisions, that way you'll be ready to know when we get to the budget work session, okay, this is something that we could probably defer, a particular year. I think if staff feels very strongly about something, we'll tell you if it's a safety issue or if it's a critical infrastructure issue, we'll let you know.
And one other point I'd like to make is, particularly now that we have contract operators at the wastewater facility, when we do engage with Davenport, my suggestion to them is going to be to truly segregate any bond or financing between the two. As you know, we've had bonds in the past that have been a mix of the two. And I think now is where we really need to.
What you're saying between the general fund and the sewer
Between
fund?
the general fund and the
So
sewer fund.
we'd issue a
Right.
different.
Right, a specific bond issue or a specific financing issue is for sewer. I really don't want to see this, oh, this is going to be for $1 million over on the sewer and $2.5 million over, I don't want to see that.
And I've never done it that way in my experience. I've always done them separately, so I don't know why it was done that way
But
here.
that's
That
the
was
way
years
it's
ago.
been done, and
Really?
for several of
Is
our
that typical
previous-
in Virginia?
They're always separated.
Well,
Yeah,
but
we've
he's saying
had several bond issues in the
That were
past
not.
that have been a mix, and
I thought
it's
they had
difficult,
paid
particularly when you have a refunding, because now you're trying to figure out what you've refunded on this portion.
Because a lot of times one's revenue, one's alternative revenue bonds, and the other one's general obligation bonds.
You got it.
Dave Rose?
David Russ, yeah.
David Rose.
Yeah.
Davenport, yeah.
Yeah, good point, good point.
Council
questions for Stephanie while she's here?
Good job, Stephanie.
We do have job openings, I'm serious.
I will be looking, I promise.
I think he did a really nice job.
Yes, he did.
And thank
Did you get pictures?
I did.
Okay,
I did.
good.
And thank you to the council for allowing that to happen.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We'd love to get
We all
you
gotta start
admin for
somewhere.
Wise County, so.
There you go.
Closer to the lake.
There you go. It's a little thing.
So just as this tails into the discussion, there is going to be a finance committee meeting on, this is the second? And that will be kind of where, really in-depth, Steve will get really in-depth with Donna and Derek, and then we probably will be able to make some decisions. Because we would like to bounce some of these things off, at least a couple council members
Yeah.
before. We want to bring or Steve wants to bring and Earl want to bring as polished as a document as they can, and a realistic document to the council's
To the
budget
council,
work session,
right.
entire council's work session, so.
Yeah, just to set expectations for next week. As you know, we've had some severe resource shortages here of late
Yeah.
with personnel and all. But the plan of attack for next week, we will have a fully loaded budget.
And I do want to put a
Fully
caveat,
loaded, okay?
like with all requests in
With
there,
all
all
requests,
reasonable requests.
But
All requests.
I think all requests are gonna be in there, because I think it's important for the finance committee, and again, it kind of ties in with the CIP. If you don't put it out on paper now, then you'll never even discuss it 2 years. You know what I mean? And so put some of these things in there so that we know what the cost is gonna be if the council decides to move in a particular direction. But bring a machete, not a scalpel.
That's what we always.
Well, and I think, adding on to what Steve said, please be aware that from an internal resource standpoint, we are stretched very thin right now. And so, ideally, I think in December, we thought, well, it'd be nice to get this timeline. I think it is going to be a timeline where it does extend a little bit. I mean, we're gonna pass the budget in time.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that I won't be here, and that's one of the reasons why I won't be here. We obviously have some shortages in the finance department. So if everybody can be understanding and patient and realize, I expect we will have a budget at the June meeting. We're not gonna be able to do it in May. We're just not, because we just don't have the capacity right now. And I think it'll be fine because you guys will have a little bit more time to digest some of this stuff.
I'll continue to work towards that.
Yeah, but I want to set
Yeah.
realistic goals, and I don't want
Right.
him to be under this immense amount of pressure with limited resources that, we need to be realistic as best we
And we
can.
will be.
Yeah, right.
And scheduling wise, technically the manager has it to council April 1, and then it has to be passed before July 1.
Well, we have to have two hearings, and as long as,
It has to be passed before July.
it just has to be passed
It's
before
June
July.
15th.
It's June 15th.
Let's double check that.
Well, it'll be the first meeting in June regardless.
Okay.
That's what we did
Yeah.
last year, I think, or 2 years ago. We did it in June, I think, yeah.
Huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Jonathan said it's 2:15.
Okay, well, he's obviously an expert in this.
His information's probably pretty current.
That's right.
You read this stuff too.
Yeah, I believe that year during the pandemic, we did it on June 6th, and I think we might have done it in May last year, I'm not sure.
Cam, that's your job. You don't know the answer to it off the top of your head.
yeah.
He doesn't know
Y'all been
everything.
messing with me and Virginia Tech all day.
Well, thank you again for coming.
Yeah, are you all done with us?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I didn't know how long this was
Chris.
gonna
Good to see
take.
you too, thank you.
We've only met through Zoom.
Yeah.
I didn't know how long it was gonna take, so we thought, let's move the meeting up a little bit, because we didn't know how much discussion we were gonna have, so. Hopefully that works out.
Oh, okay. No, what'd you think?
There's really a lot of information in the addition.
So, so council, at this point in time, we're at council member reports. Does anybody have a report they'd like to get?
No.
Mike was on the end.
We're in the council member report section of the meeting.
Would you like to get the council?
Sounds like they remember the word on it.
Well, I don't think we have a closed session scheduled for today that I know of. So that brings us to the end. We're adjourned.
Wow.
That's it.
Did any of the department heads want to say anything?
It's too late, we already adjourned.
Yeah.
Well, now it's off the record.
That's it.
I think less is more, right?